Welcome to class PM. The previous class we have studied about the force and its effects. We have seen that force can change the direction. It can even change the motion of an object. At the same time, it can deform the shape of any object. This class, we learn about a different type of force which is said to be contact force. So, when we talk about contact forces, let me first give a general meaning of contact, right? So, when I talk about contact, what comes into your mind? Is that your contact list in the phone? Right? See, whenever you just open your phone, you see if you have to dial someone or any of your friend, what do you do? Where do you go? You get into the contacts of your phone and then ring up, right? So is that the same force, right? Is that the force which you are applying on your screen so that you can open your contact, right? So that means this contact in English is generally like we say, let us be in touch or let us be in contact with each other, right? That means we try to communicate. We try to communicate in terms of English, we generally call contact means the same, right? But when you talk about this physics contact, it is not that object tries to communicate with a person. Like I'll tell you, in case of contact force, if a force has to be applied on the object, the body should be in contact with the object. Say how? That the body should be in contact with the object. Now if I'll give you an example, let me give you a small example. So generally like say nowadays we are facing a water problem, severe water problem, right? Say like if your city, in whichever city you're living in, has water problem, and we know that sometimes we have to go out to bring water when there is large scarcity, like huge scarcity found. So what do? Either you use your two-wheeler or a four-wheeler and you just go to a water plant. Imagine, okay, if you're going out to a water plant, you just park your vehicle right in front of the water plant and stand still there. Will that water bottle get into your car? No, it can't walk like human being, right? So it doesn't get into the car. It doesn't get into the car. What is to be done? You have to go lift it, put it into your car, right? So that means what is that you're doing? Your water bottle is an object. So if you have to apply force onto that object, your body should be in contact with it. So which part of your body is in contact? Hands. You don't lift it with your legs, right? That is ridiculous. We don't use our legs to lift objects. So that means you're using your hands and your part of your body, right? Hand is a part of your body. So isn't your body in contact with the object? Right, of course. If I ask you to lift a book which is kept on the table and put it back into your bookshelf or a book rack, what do? You try to lift the book using your hands. Yes? So in the same way, if you are asked to kick a ball while playing, right? You kick a ball. So what do? You kick it hard using your muscular force, which is of your legs, right? So such a force is said to be muscular force. That means you're using your muscular force to do the things. That means you're applying a muscular force to move an object, See, this is all the forces. These examples which I just cited are generally they speak about the external force which is applied that by our muscles, right? See, my hand is externally applying a force to throw a ball while bowling, right? So when I'm bowling, I'll just use my arm, the muscular force of my arm, so that I can throw a ball, so that I can take a wicket, right? Most of you people might be watching cricket. You know, like what do? They spin the ball using a muscular force so that they can have a wicket, right? So that means the muscular force of your arms are used. That's the reason this type of contact force is called as muscular force. And this is all externally done, right? Outside the body. But there are few forces which act inside your body also. Have you ever thought? Yes, there is muscular force which is acting inside your body. Have you ever thought of like what is that muscular force which is acting inside our body? Right. If you remember, in class 6 we have a chapter regarding digestion, human digestion. We have seen that right from we put our food into our mouth, right? The way it gets into the stomach, right? And the way it gets into your large intestine and the way it comes out of your body. All this is assisted by what? The contraction of the muscle. Isn't that a muscular force? Yes, of course. You cannot deny saying that it isn't muscular force. It is absolutely muscular force. See, when the food has to be pushed into your stomach, the food pipe which is present, the muscles of this food pipe, what do? They come in contact with the object. What is the object over there? The food, right? So they come in contact with the object called food and they use the force between the muscles so that they can push the food into the stomach. So will you not agree with me that pushing the food into the stomach is a muscular action? right? So is that not a muscular force? Absolutely it is muscular force. So like when you talk about your circulation, right? Heart pumps out blood. How does it pump out? Does it has any motor fixed inside? No, it doesn't has any motor fixed. See, generally we know that if you have to draw the water from the sump in your house, what do? You generally fix a motor, right? And we try to take the water onto the rooftop. Yes, that is a overhead tank. But in case of humans, do we have such motors in our body? No, that is the force which is exerted by the muscles will help to pump the blood by the heart, right? In the same way, when you breathe, what is happening? You can just feel the muscular force by breathing. You just take a long breath. Then what do you observe? What do you feel? You feel that the muscles are exerted, right? Some force is acting on the muscle of your abdomen. What is that? That is nothing but the muscular force. So I think you all agree with me that the muscular force is a contact force where if a force has to be applied on an object, the body should be in contact with the object. So such forces are called as muscular forces. Okay, and not only human beings, even animals also apply muscular force. How? Will they run or will they lift something? What do? Yes, there are. If you remember, we have studied history of transport in class 6, right? So there we have seen that early man used these animals to carry loads. So these loads are kept on the heavy loads are kept on the back of an animal. So what does that they have to use? They have to strengthen their legs so that they can move from one place to the other place. So in such case, which force is acting on their legs? It is muscular force. It is muscular force. So you might have clearly understood that this muscular force is seen in case of animals, in case of humans, right? So this muscular force is a contact force because always to apply a force on an object, the body should be in contact with the object. So this is about your muscular force. So as I've told you, since muscular force can be only applied when the body is in contact with the object, that is the reason this is also called as contact force. Contact force. So you might have understood about the muscular force. Now coming to frictional force. Now you all might have plenty of questions in your mind, right? When we talk about frictional force, have you ever thought of like when we walk, okay, on the floor, why don't we skip and fall? Why don't we skid and fall, right? See, if there is water on the floor, definitely if you don't see it and you just walk onto it, you just slip off, right? But when the floor is dry, okay, when you still walk on it, you don't fall. Why? And when you just roll the ball onto the floor, you see that it rolls for a certain period, certain distance, and then stops. And you also might have observed sometimes, suddenly when you off the engine of the car stops. Why? What is that? What is that force which is making them to stop or which is helping the object to stop? See, sometimes you don't apply any force. See, you just roll the ball onto the floor. That's it. You don't apply any force to make it stop, right? So then how come after a certain distance or after a few seconds, how come this ball gets stopped? Or how come the ball stops rolling? Have you ever thought of this? Yes, I'll tell you how it is. This is because of the frictional force. This frictional force is nothing but the force between the object and the surface. Object and the surface. Now, if the surface is smooth, right, the object slides off. And if the surface is rough, say like, take the ball, okay, take 2 balls and take one small piece of small piece of tile, and on the other side you take a small concrete slab, right, concrete slab tile. Now try to roll the ball on both the surfaces. Now which ball would roll down and which ball will stop rolling? Which ball doesn't move at all? Right, your guess is right. The ball which is slided on the tile, smooth tile, will roll because there is less friction between the object, that is the ball, and the surface. But when there is a rough surface like concrete, concrete, right? They have all small pebbles and the surface is uneven. It isn't smooth, right? When you try to roll the ball onto that surface, you see that the ball doesn't roll because the surface, there is no proper friction, there is no proper contact between the object and the surface. So in such case, you don't see the ball rolling, right? So that is the reason you don't slip when you walk on the floor. See, have you ever observed when you wear your shoes or when you wear your sandals, or when you wear some other kind of slippers, have you observed the sole of those shoes or slippers, right? Yes, they have a grip, right? They have a sole of grip under the shoe, right? Why? Why is this grip given? So that we don't slip off and fall. So this grip will create a friction between our leg, that is between the shoe and the surface on which we walk. That's the reason you might have seen when the people who are living in hill stations, they generally use shoes which have spikes, right? Because the spikes which are present, they provide a good grip, because most of the time in such places like Shimla and Kashmir, it is snowy. Even the roads are covered with the snow. So if you wear the normal kind of slippers which you wear here and walk on that surface, you just slide off and definitely you will have fractures. So to prevent this, they usually use those kind of shoes where they have those spiky things, so that they can grip, boots you can actually call it as, right? That can have a grip between the shoe, in between the shoe and the surface of the road, right? So that is the reason you see even mountaineers also, they have, like, and athletes also, you see sports persons wear different kinds of shoes, right? When you go to purchase shoes to an athlete shop or to a sports shop, you find different kinds of shoes for different sports, right? Because it depends upon the sport which we play. They provide us with the shoe, right? For running you have different shoes, and for jogging you have different shoes, for football you have different shoes. So this is how, so that this sole which is present will provide the grip, so that player or a person won't slip off and fall, right? You might have understood now what is frictional force, right? So this frictional force is nothing but the force which will make an object stop, a moving object stop. See, that's the reason I've just told you that when the engine is off, the car stops. That means you're not applying any force, but still the car stops. That is because the grip you might have seen when you look at the tire, you see the tire has threading. So have you ever seen a plain tire? No, we don't find any plain tires. The tires are will always have threading, right? So what does this threadings do? These threadings will work as gripping forces. So this threading will provide a grip on the surface of the road. So when you off the engine, immediately they hold the grip between the surface of the road and the tire, so that the car stops. See, generally, we usually, when you continuously use the same vehicle for many years, you see that the threading of the tires gets tear, right? So what do? They change the tire so that we can reduce the chances of accidents. So if you have a smooth surface of the tire, and when you just go boom onto the road, you just slip off and fall, right? So that's the reason there is always a threading seen in the tires. If you see the advertisements of MRF tires or Seat tires or whatever tires in the TV, they usually show us only the threading of the tires, and they try to explain that this threading would help the vehicle to run smoothly. So these type of forces are said to be frictional forces. Now you might have a question, why is this frictional force called as a contact force? Right, this frictional force is also called as a contact force because it is in contact with some body, so that the force applied on object should be in the contact with the body. So that is the reason this is also called as contact force. So this frictional force which is present is said to be a contact force. Why is this said to be a contact force? Because contact between the two surfaces, only then this can happen, right? If there is no contact between the road and the tire, will there be a frictional force? No. So that's the reason it is called as frictional force. And you need to remember one important thing. In case of frictional force, the force which is applied on a moving body will be in opposite direction of the motion of the body. Say like, if in case of frictional force, say like this is the object, if the force is applied this way, okay, if the force is applied in this direction, let us say this is an object, and if this is the direction of the frictional force, it will always be in the opposite direction of the motion. Say like if the car is moving this way, when a brake is applied, so the frictional force is in the opposite direction of the car tire, so that the car gets stopped, right? This is the most important thing you need to remember in case of frictional force. So frictional forces will act on all the moving objects, but the force will be in the opposite direction of the motion. So these forces are said to be what? Contact forces. So by now you might have understood what contact forces are, right? It's very easy to understand. So muscular forces, you can write a number of examples, At the same time, frictional forces also, you can give so many examples. So every day when you walk, you don't see, imagine what would be the condition if there was no frictional force. All the time we would slip off, all the time we could never stand properly, right? So there would not be any friction between your feet and your floor. See, even when you walk barefoot, that is without your chappal, you don't fall, because the skin which comes in contact, the skin of your feet which comes in contact, it's never smooth. Just take out your chappal, look at your feet, the skin which is present under your feet, it's like some small thready kind, and the surface itself is not smooth, right? When this comes in contact with the floor, as the floor is smooth, the surface of your feet is little irregular. That's the reason the shape of your feet is also different. It is not flat like your arm. Is it flat like your arm? No. So that is the reason you have that curved feet, where they grip us, they help us to grip us when we walk barefoot on the floor. So this is all about your contact forces. Now let us learn about the next category of forces, that is non-contact forces. Non-contact forces. So these non-contact forces, the name itself is indicating that they are not in contact. That means the two surfaces are not in contact with each other, or else you can say that the object and the body are not in contact with each other. Such forces are called as non-contact forces. What are such forces called as? Non-contact forces. So the forces in where you don't see, when a force is applied on an object, it is not necessary that it should be in contact with the object. So such forces are called as non-contact forces. There are two different types of non-contact forces you're going to learn: magnetic force, electrostatic force, gravitational force. These non-contact forces are always like, they can exert a force on another object without being in contact with them. So before I start with magnetic forces, let us do an activity. You all know bar magnets, right? So these bar magnets are usually cylindrical shaped and they have both the poles, right? So take a pair of bar magnets and place the longer end of the bar magnet onto a wooden roller or a round sharp pencil, right? And now what you do is try to bring the other end of the magnet towards this bar magnet. What do you observe? You see, we have learned in magnetism in class 6, like poles of the magnet repel and unlike poles of the magnet attract. So when there are like poles, say like north end is brought towards the north end, definitely you will not see any kind of movement in case of the magnet, right? But when a south pole is brought towards the end of the north pole, then definitely you'll see that there is a small movement or a slow movement in case of this bar magnet which is used, right? So such a type of force, that means one of the magnet is exerting force, you're just bringing it closer, you're not getting in contact. See, this is how, say like if this is the bar magnet, this is just taken closer to the other magnet which is placed on the you can say wooden roller, right? So when you just try to get it, if this is the north pole and this is the south pole, when you just try to get it, you see that slowly this gets like it shows a slight movement, it tries to get attracted towards it, right? So such a type of movement where there is no contact between these two objects. Have you seen that there is no contact between these two objects, right? Yes or no? There is no contact between these two objects. So this is placed a little far away from the bar magnet, but still they try to come in contact with each other, or still you see that there is a magnetic force which is pulling the other bar magnet towards it, right? Such forces which are brought in contact with each other, that means though they are far apart, they can still show a little movement. Such forces are called as magnetic forces. So now the force which is exerted by a bar magnet is a non-contact force, because have you seen this diagram? They are not in contact with each other, but still it is trying to apply a force onto the other end of the bar magnet. So such forces are said to be non-contact forces. That means they don't ever come in touch with each other. Unlike in case of contact forces, both objects should be in touch or in contact with each other. But whereas in case of non-contact, you see that though these magnets are far away from each other, right? Though the magnets are far away from each other, if unlike poles are facing each other, then they try to attract, right? So that means though this is not close or placed over the surface of it, it is still trying to create a force in between the objects. So such forces are called as non-contact forces. So the next type of force electrostatic force. See, this electrostatic force is something which is very interesting, right? All of you might have done, right? When you, in your childhood, I don't say that you're grown up enough, but still you might have been doing, right? See, we generally, what we do, we say that we'll do a magic, we'll show you without a magnet. I can just pick up the papers which are kept on the table using a scale. So what do? We just take a scale, rub it on a silk cloth, soft silk cloth, or we just rub it onto the head. If we have oil on the head, so we rub it over the head, surface of the head. That means when you're rubbing, there is a friction which is created, a force which is created. So the particles which are present, due to the particles which are present on the scale due to rubbing, they attain a charge. And when you bring that scale which is rubbed over a silk cloth, when you get that scale or a comb and just put it over a sheet of paper where you have pieces of paper kept, and place it over the surface of the paper, crumpled paper, small pieces of crumpled paper, you see that the papers get stick to the surface of the scale or comb. That is because of electrostatic force. Such a force is called as electrostatic force, right? So that means you might have understood. See, here also the scale or comb is just placed above the pieces of paper. It is not attached to the pieces of paper, right? So that means this object is trying to apply a force on the other object, of that is pieces of paper, without coming in contact with each other. So such non-contact forces are said to be electrostatic forces. Usually we, all of us, even I also have played so many times, when we are in childhood, we feel that we are great magicians and we can do anything, right? So this kind of things are, we feel that we are so tricky. We can show magic to the people by playing pranks like applying oil to the head, rubbing your comb or scale and getting over the pieces of paper and say, see, my scale has attracted because I have done some magic on it. It's not the magic, it's electrostatic force. It is electrostatic force. So you might have understood. In the same way, you can do a small activity. You can just take a straw, okay, cut it into 2 equal halves and hang one of the half using a thread to a stand. Now we have the other straw which is cut, right? Take that straw, rub it over a smooth surface of a silk cloth. It should be really smooth, not the cloth of your dupattas or your silk dress. Like you get that velvet cloth, right, which is smooth and you can feel the texture, right? So rub it over the silk cloth for 5 to 6 seconds, or say like 1 minute. Then take this straw which is rubbed on a silk cloth and try to take it near to the straw which is hanged using a thread. What do you observe? You definitely will observe that it tries to get in contact with the straw which is hanging. What does it indicate? It indicates that the straw is trying to attract the other piece of the straw by applying a force without coming in contact with each other. So such forces are called as non-contact forces. So that non-contact force is known as electrostatic. What do you mean by electrostatic? Electro means charge, right? Static is there is no charge. See, the pieces of paper, bits of pieces of paper, they don't have any charge, but they get charged when you take, what is that you're doing? You're rubbing the scale over the head or your silk cloth. When you're rubbing the scale over the silk cloth, the scale gets charged, right? And when you go and put it over a static object, it definitely gets attracted towards the charge. So that's the reason this is said to be electrostatic force. The next type of force is gravitational force. I think right from class 4, 3, you've been learning about gravitational force. Now you people have to tell me what gravitational force is, right? If you know that Earth is called as magnet, natural magnet, right? So, and this natural magnet or the Earth which is present, it has a tendency to attract every object towards the center. And do you know what was the story of gravity? I think most of you might know. Like Newton, when he was sitting under an apple tree, right? He saw apple falling down onto the ground. Then he felt like, why did apple fall down? Why can't it go up? What is that force which is making the object come down, right? When you're standing, are you just flying somewhere? Or are you being pulled inside the earth? No, but you're still stable on the earth. You can stand, you can walk, you can jump. But can you do the same thing in the space? See, most of you might be having interest towards the space astronomy. right? So when you space and astronomy, so we know that the astronauts who go into the space, they cannot stand like us in the space because there is no gravity over there. That's the reason they keep flying, right? We can fly like birds without wings in the space. But can we fly here? Now I just wanted to fly. Can I? No, because there is a force called gravitational force which is pulling the body, or my body is nothing but object, right? Object towards the center. And such a type of force is said to be gravitational force. Now, how come this force is considered to be a non-contact force? See, how come this gravitational force is a non-contact force? Let me take the same example. From the apple tree, the apple falls down, right? When it is falling down, is that there is any contact between the earth and the apple? No, but there is a force which has been acting by the earth due to which the apple is falling down. But both the objects are not in contact. That means both the surfaces are not in contact. That's the reason it is called as non-contact force. That's the reason it is called as non-contact force. So this is all about your force and how force can change the motion, direction, and what are the different types of forces we come across every day.